They didn't see it coming. Every insult, every betrayal, every dismissive glance. They thought it would break you. They assumed patience meant weakness. They believed mercy was surrender. They never realized it was the soil where your strength would grow. Each slight they inflicted became fuel. Every moment of neglect carved a piece of you that they could not touch. Every lie, every hidden jab, sharpened the edges they didn't know existed. They created circumstances. They built a foundation for something unstoppable. The first monster emerged quietly, silent, hidden behind a smile, a nod, a careful word. It was a seed, planted in the shadow of their cruelty. It grew slowly. It learned patience. It learned strategy. It waited. The next monster was anger. It wasn't chaotic. It wasn't loud. It was calculated, precise, and patient. It measured every move they made, every deception they tried to hide. It knew their patterns. It knew their weaknesses. And it planned. Another monster thrived in the darkness, the one that fed on their disbelief. They laughed at your silence. They mocked your restraint. They assumed the storm would pass without notice. But storms do not ask permission. Storms do not wait. They rise. The final monster emerged from pain. Every betrayal, every injustice, every careless word transformed into power. This monster did not forgive. This monster did not forget. This monster understood every slight, every subtle act of cruelty and stored it like currency. They thought they were teaching you a lesson. They thought they were shaping you into something they could control. Instead, they were teaching the monster patience. They were crafting intelligence. They were forging instinct. They were molding resilience. The monster of strategy moved next. It planned without remorse. It struck without warning. Every action they thought inconsequential became a weapon in its hands. Every underestimation fed its power. Every glance of doubt they cast upon you strength. Every glance of doubt they cast upon you strengthened it further. Then came the monster of influence. It didn't need armies. It didn't need validation. It moved quietly among them, bending perception, shaping expectation. Their arrogance became its playground. Their confidence became its advantage. The monster of endurance was relentless. It bore all the pain they had thrown, the weight of every insult and betrayal, and transformed it into unshakable resolve. They thought you were breaking. They were wrong. The monster did not break. The monster of reckoning finally arrived. It didn't seek vengeance in petty ways. It didn't roar blindly. It moved with precision. Every slight was accounted for. Every betrayal was noted. And when it acted with absolute clarity. They began to see changes. The quiet glances, the careful words, the controlled strength. They felt it in the room, like a shadow, stretching across them. The monster had arrived, and it was unstoppable. The monster of reflection whispered. Everything they did was their fault. The sleepless nights, the humiliation, the lies. They crafted the very being standing before them. They molded it through neglect. They sculpted it through cruelty. They created the inevitability of their own reckoning. The monster of fear revealed itself in subtle ways. It didn't scream. It didn't threaten. It existed quietly, a presence that unsettled. They realized every action had consequences they hadn't anticipated. Every dismissal had been catalogued. Every betrayal had become a lesson. Another monster resilience stood proud. It had survived storms they had thrown. It had endured chaos they had orchestrated. It had learned patience, strategy, strength, and control, and it was unshakable. The monster of inevitability moved with quiet power. They tried to manipulate, to control, to dismiss, to laugh. It didn't matter. It was too late. They had created the consequence they could never undo. The monster of authority now took its place. It didn't need acknowledgement. It didn't need applause. It didn't need anyone to validate its existence. It had grown from shadows, pain, and neglect into something absolute. The monster of destiny whispered, everything you feared, everything you hid, every piece they ignored, they crafted it all. You didn't become it by choice. You became it because they left you no other path. And now you are unstoppable. Every glance they give you now carries weight. Every word they speak carries guilt. Every act reminds them of what they created. The monster you became walks freely, silent, patient, unyielding, and the truth they cannot escape is simple. The monster is theirs. Every growth, every edge, every calculated move, they authored it. And now, the world must recognize it. They created the storm. They created the darkness. They created the monster. And the monster will never forget. The monster will never forgive. The monster will never surrender. Because the monster you became was their fault. They pushed you to the edge. Every insult, every betrayal, every careless word chipped away at the person you were. You felt the cracks forming inside you, the hollow growing, the silence screaming, louder than any voice ever could. And in that darkness, the seed of something powerful began to grow, a monster, not born but forged, not evil but necessary. The world called you weak, fragile, replaceable. They laughed at your attempts, dismissed your presence, ignored your worth. But little did they know, each slight, each dismissal was feeding the monster inside. Every time they underestimated you, the monster grew stronger, sharper, more relentless. They were unknowingly constructing the very force they feared the most. You became the shadow in the corner of their vision, the quiet storm behind their careless smiles. This monster wasn't loud at first. It whispered, it waited, it observed. Every Every grin you faked, every nod you offered, every time you held back the fire, the monster recorded it all. It learned patience, strategy, and the cruel poetry of calculated revenge. They thought fear was a tool reserved for the timid, for those who trembled at confrontation. They never guessed that monsters, true monsters, thrive in silence. The monster inside you doesn't panic, doesn't falter, doesn't compromise. It waits for the perfect moment to awaken, to claim what was always rightfully yours, and to remind the world that nothing can break someone forged in relentless pain. People said monsters are born, not made. Lies. Monsters are the survivors of firestorms, the children of betrayal, the reflections of every cruelty inflicted upon them. They were the architects of your transformation. Every tear you shed, every wound you endured, every mockery you endured was a brick in the fortress of your own monstrous power. They will never admit it. They will never see the truth. The monster is not something to hide. It is not shameful. It is the culmination of every insult, every slight, every moment they thought you powerless. The monster became the defender, the force, the reckoning they never prepared for. With every step you take now, the ground shakes for those who doubted you. The air thickens with the weight of their own mistakes. They do not see the monster they helped create, but they feel its presence, its inevitability. The monster you became is not just within you, it walks beside you. It breathes with you. It sharpens itself with your resolve. And yet, this monster is not mindless. It is disciplined. It is patient. It is a calculated force of nature. It knows who deserves its wrath, who deserves a lesson, and who will crumble under its gaze. The monster inside you has learned every pattern of deceit, every lie, every weakness people tried to exploit. It is flawless in its awareness. They believed they could suppress you, control you, manipulate your choices. But monsters cannot be tamed. The monster inside you is not a beast of chaos. It is a force of justice, of balance, of retribution. They cannot bargain with it. They cannot reason with it. They can only witness the storm they nurtured and tremble. You do not seek permission to exist, to strike, to claim your power. Monsters do not apologize. They do not beg. They do not explain. They move. They act. They reclaim. Every decision you make, every boundary you enforce, every truth you reveal is a strike against those who tried to diminish you. The monster is your voice when the world would remain silent.